Hello there, it's good to be with you on the JoyNews channel. You're watching PM Express. This program is proudly brought to you by Stanbic Bank, Pepsodent Cavity Fighter, and also Syntex Tank, tough, strong. Well, we're speaking to one man who's become family, if you want to describe him as such, because he's been on the airwaves, giving us the need to rethink Africa's development. He's a governance expert, he's a marketer, and also an applied scientist, so it gives him, that accolade of being a man of many hats. But much more importantly, we are having him on a day that we'll never forget in Ghana's history. Because just about 60 years ago, what many argue is Ghana's arguably most trusted path towards development was curtailed in an operation Cold Chop by some individuals who decided to overthrow Ghana's first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, in 1966. 60 years down the line, we're back in that spiral. In fact, the case is much more worse within the West Africa sub-region, which is now being described as an epicenter for violent extremism and, talk less of that sad spectacle of the increasing cases of military overthrows in West Africa. Ghana has been spared, fortunately, but this gentleman we're about to talk to says there is a bad coup, there's a good coup, and beyond that, there's something that we ought to be focused on in terms of pushing through a much more genuine, popular-based revolution that will yield development, true development for the people of Ghana. Yaw Nsarkoh, it's a pleasure to have you on PM Express again.
Thank you very much, Blessed.
You've been away, doing a lot. And you're quite modest because you don't want to be out there telling people that you're doing a lot. But I know you're doing a lot.
Thank you for having me again.
That's all you say. I know, it's fine. We'll grant you that because that's how modest you are. But, when we talk about Ghana's development, many see that as a far-fetched narrative. Why would you be talking development when, of course, you have a country that's already grappling with economic issues and social, political matters that immediately confront us? Why development? Why long-term even in the first place?
Well, the long term is where we will live, not the past, not the present. The long term is where we will live. And the long term is where our progeny will live, more importantly. So if we're people who think very carefully about what society we will like those who come after us to live in, then we have to be focused on the long term, not the short term. Yes, there are immediate pressures, but we must understand the past and the immediate pressures in order that we can create a better future for those who come after us. And I would think that should be the ambition of people who are serious about citizenship and about society.
Do you feel we've ever ended that debate of having a national development plan for this country? Some say go the short term. The SWAL administration truncated the whole 40, 100-year development plan, by the NDC 1, John Mahama 1, and then brought in under Yaw Nsarkoh for the 8-year development plan. Of course, we did our own tinkering with the other plans. Then we're back into another regime which now wants to go back to base and to go back to that original plan of a long-term development plan. Why do you feel that we've never had, a common denominator in drawing or fashioning out a development plan for this country?
Because you say we, but I'm not sure what that we means. The plans you talked about were all owned by one political cabal or one political party. Okay. I struggle to find which is the one that is owned by all Ghanaians. And while we like to think that we are doing the long-term plan, keep in mind that, for example, when Mao appeared in China in 1949, the Chinese Communist Party set 100-year goals. And recently, they reviewed them. Not even when he appeared in 1949, I got that wrong. It was when they set off in 1921. The Chinese Communist Party set 100-year goals. In 2021, they reviewed them and they had exceeded all the objectives that were set. You show me those plans that you spoke about, that you said we, without defining the we, which one was objectively reviewed, results fed back to the people of Ghana, which one, at the change of government, was sustained, which one, when it was changed, did the people of Ghana rise up and say, this is our plan, we don't care which political party is in place. So we have a crisis. We assume that we have things because we just say we do, but we have a real crisis. I struggle in my lifetime to point to what we can really call a long-term plan, that leader come, leader go, party come, party go, that we have stuck to. And I think that is the problem.
You're just coming off a conversation with academia, the Noguchi Memorial Center, where of course you're reliving your times in this academic space of the University of Ghana and looking back 40 years and seeing what has happened to the country in terms of its development trajectory. And sadly you say that there's this winner-take-all system that has just crept into political dispensation. When did it all start, and how do we even end it in the first place?
When it started, I will not pronounce myself the final authority in determining, but anybody who was at the front bench of the conversation about demilitarizing the politics in Ghana and introducing what we today call a democracy, which I describe as a Santa Claus democracy because it is not a true democracy, will tell you that there was a period of time where the single idea of the pro-democracy forces was to create political space in order that people could be free, in order that you guys could operate, in order that our civic responsibilities could be discharged in an environment free of fear.
Yeah.
And at that time, there was a significant amount of solidarity around that big idea. We wanted the military out of politics, we wanted more freedom, etc. And you saw real coalition. There's an extent to which we have to admit to a certain degree of naivety in believing that when we did get to this era of constitutional democracy, the big idea of development was going to take its place. I do not say that there has been no progress whatsoever. I will be the first to say that however much we complain about the present, I still feel that we have made some progress relative to the military era, where we were all afraid to even speak and you could be picked up for whatever. But many of us, I was going to say nobody, but many of us did not foresee this rabid polarization, which meant that when you say we and I ask you which we, you're not able to tell me immediately which we you're talking about.
Yeah, you still believe it's not inclusive?
It is not inclusive. It's not just that I believe that it is not inclusive. It is not inclusive. The main political leadership in the country is obsessed with winning power and winning power for their side. So immediately after the elections in 2024, what started? We know that the current president has one term if he sticks to the constitutional limits, which he says he will.
He will.
His own party, with a candidate having just won the presidency, went into what is open, maybe to some extent, covert, but everybody can see it, that the succession battle has started in his party. What is supposed to be the political alternative, the opposition, also immediately went into who is going to be their candidate. And from then on, it's a game of everybody looking for how they can trip the other. So that in 2028, we are sitting in 2026. The number of times that you hear the conversation about 2028, you do worry. So what has happened is that development did not come to be the real partner, accompanying partner of democracy, where the purpose of the democracy was actually to improve the well-being of people, to learn real development. We're spending all our time on the factional infighting among what I call the political elites. The party of the elites is in power, and it has two segments, the MPP and the NDC. They're all the party of the elites.
Added to that is what you describe as over-legalization?
Yes.
What does that mean?
You guys have played a part in that as well. That yes, the rule of law is very important, don't get me wrong. If you're going to have a disciplined society, you have to have a rule of law. But you just turn on any station.
Yeah.
Everywhere we are talking about the technicalities of legal science without coupling it to what real impacts we are looking for in society, how that is going to drive real development. Now, the technicalities of legal science may be important, but the reason why the entire process for the delivery of administrative justice exists is to deliver justice in society. So if you have all the technicalities of legal science in place, which are necessary, but you have 20% of your population living in extreme poverty, is that justice? If you have all the suffering and misery that is around us, is that justice? And if you are going, therefore, to deliver real justice, it is not a matter that can be left to only the legal experts. You need all the other disciplines involved, because to get real justice in society, the lawyers have a role. I don't participate in that conversation that demonizes them. But so do the sociologists, so do the philosophers, so do the peasants who are living their experiences. Where is that conversation taking place? But look at the amount of time that our media spends on the technicalities of legal science, which itself excludes many people because you're using such esoteric language that the ordinary people in the streets don't even understand what you're talking about. So you're regurgitating the concerns of the metropolitan elites living in the center of Accra, discussing things that make them extremely happy. But how does that change the set of circumstances of the majority of people who are dispossessed and disenfranchised economically? That's what I mean by over-legalization, over-financialization. They're all derivatives of the neoliberal construction.
I see. And yet, proponents of the freedom nexus, if I should call it as such, believe that whatever the case, and whatever it is that has gone wrong with us, at least we still have the freedom that Dr. Kwame Nkrumah professed when we became independent. You look back at how his tenure was terminated in 1966, and as of today, Ghana is a different story with a country that has a stable democracy in such a tough neighborhood. So is freedom alone not enough an indicator for us to say, well, we're making progress, we're developing?
What is freedom? That's what we have to discuss. It's a capacious concept. Freedom doesn't mean that I have the ability to say what I want to the president and then I'm free. Are you free when you don't know where your next meal is coming from? Are you free when you don't have basic sanitation? Are you free when your metropolitan capital is turning into a concrete jungle, as we were talking about just when we were speaking? Are you free when your cocoa farmers are so unhappy? So freedom evolves. The freedom that initially Kwame Nkrumah spoke about was about freedom which was a step away from colonial oppression. They did a great job and they got it. We must now evolve and make it more capacious, more rounded. We cannot be free if you have your environment being destroyed by galamsey. We cannot be free if 18% of our population are subjected to the indignity of open defecation. We cannot be free if 20% of our people have no decent accommodation and no decent housing. So we have to make the concept of freedom much more capacious. The problem with when we talk about freedom today is that we have constricted the definitions. And therefore the conversation around development is trying to land something that is a very constricted definition from which the elite alone benefit. That's why I call what we are doing a palanquin economy. Small group of people like you, they do well for themselves, but what about the majority?
Yeah, a welfare economy you're looking for.
I don't like these tags because by welfare economies, you mean something, and maybe I can ask you to explain it, but the next person means something different. So I like to keep things very simple. I'm looking for an economy in which we liberate the productive forces in order to improve the well-being of the majority of our compatriots. You call that what you want to call it, and that describes me. And therefore, when you talk about liberating the productive forces, you are harnessing the means of production, the modes of production, the materials of production, land, natural resources, etc. And the most important one, knowledge. Knowledge as the primary productive force. And I do not want the conversation then to be about new hotels and new restaurants selling sushi and new buildings and so on. I want to be able to go into the rural areas and see that the people who were subjected to opiumification now have a good means. That galamsey is ending. More people are going to school in ways that qualitatively improve them. They have access to potable drinking water. Because of all of those things coming together, we see our life expectancy begin to increase. So that the conversation is not just constricted to that we have 50 basis points more of growth of GDP and balance of payments. They're all important. But what you're trying to deliver is a qualitative uplift in the human circumstances and the ecosystem in which they operate.
Going retrospect, I would want to talk about Dr. Kwame Nkrumah because you mentioned that name. Almost 60 years ever since he was taking off from office through a coup d'etat. Is that where we started losing it as a country? Because there was this whole long-term development plan by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and right after the 66 coup, it was jettisoned.
The name, as soon as you mention Kwame Nkrumah, the society bifurcates. Some people think he was 100% demon, and some people say he was 100% angel. He was a great man, no doubt about that. Absolutely great man who did great things, but he was not a perfect man. And in that statement, I annoy both sides. Those who don't want to hear anything good about Kwame Nkrumah say, why do you say he was great? And many of those who say he was great say, why do you say he was not perfect? But there's no human being that was perfect. I cannot hang all the problems of Ghana today on Kwame Nkrumah alone. But if your question is a roundabout way of asking me what my position on the 1966 coup, I totally condemn it. Whatever the limitations or deficiencies of Kwame Nkrumah were, whatever the causes, by 1966, yes, there were certain things that had happened in the country that if they happened today, I would condemn them. So I cannot say that they were handsome occurrences. But so too, the bomb ravages that were happening and so on were extenuating circumstances. My position is that no matter what his deficiencies were, no group of soldiers and policemen had the authority or the mandate, the political mandate, to pick up arms and overthrow a sitting government. So I condemn it completely. And there is no coup after that I sanction. I am totally opposed to a small cabal of conspiratorial, cliquish, clannish element of the military or the armed forces taking up arms against the citizens for whom they are supposed to exist to protect in order to overthrow the government at their whim and caprice. If we welcome this because we do not like certain specific leaders, what stops the military from toppling every government every day? And what I point out to people all the time, the day after, if you say you don't like dictatorship or a despotic system in place, and therefore the military should exist, what do you have the day after a coup when the military intervenes?
Dictatorship.
You have another military dictatorship. So that day, should another military set of people, and I've used the word military, so I must clarify, the military as an establishment, the institutional arrangement that is called the military has never stayed a coup, at least not in this country. It has always been a cabal. And that is why it is inherently anti-democratic, and I cannot see how people who claim to really believe in democracy sometimes say that they are looking for a coup as a mechanism
So you
of
just
change.
described Nkrumah as not being a perfect man. His imperfections were standing in the way of his perfections, is it?
Everybody's imperfections, to some extent, stand in the way of their perfections. It's a dialectical relationship, so you try to manage the two. So yes, to some extent, yes, you have to take the whole person and the whole historical record, both that which was good and that which was not so good. And to some extent, yes, his weaknesses would have decelerated some of the things that he wanted to do, but so would his strengths have accelerated them. But I come back to the point Give me the tallest list of whatever Nkrumah's deficiencies where I say it gives no license to anybody to upstage the coup.
Except to say that you've been trying to experiment as to which kind of economic module will work for us. Many have proposed the Nkrumah module. I don't know if that will be relevant now.
What is the Nkrumah model?
Well,
we like to use these
state-led,
terms.
isn't it? And well, it was less of a market approach in dealing with the challenges that we're...
Is that very true, that it was less of a market approach? You are the person who had come into office, depending on where you want to start in 1951, 54, 57.
Right.
You had a population that had very little capital accumulation. Therefore, if you said that you wanted to build hotels and you wanted to build schools and who was the agent that was going to do it? It was going to be the state. Yeah. But if you look around, there's many of the businesses that became and have lasted since then, the multinational corporations and so on and so forth, were all here. Yeah, my own previous employer was here. There were many others when I was growing up with Kingsway and so on and so forth. So when people say the Nkrumah model, I'm not totally sure. You have to park it. I'm not trying to dodge the question. You have to tell me the details of what you mean by that, because any 100 people that say the Nkrumah model mean 100 different things. I believe in a model that is pragmatic, that the state gets involved where the state must get involved, the private sector gets involved where the private sector must get involved. What I absolutely dislike is that because of ideological prejudices, what is very clear that the state can do, you say, no, the state must not do it because we have a history of failed state-owned enterprises. So what? There is no country, I make bold to say, no country that has reached development that did not have the state as a major actor. Who is going to manage the system for the delivery of administrative justice? Who is going to implement the rule of law?
Right.
And in some specific areas, there are issues of strategic sensitivity, there's security. Sometimes the state is the only actor that can marshal the needed resources in order to be able to enter a state. In those instances, we must say that the state does it.
But does the data bear you out when, of course, Sogah, responsible for assessing state institutions, will continuously release reports pointing out to malfeasance, inefficiency technically within many of our state-owned enterprises. They're barely making profits. Even the ones making profits have some element of private investment.
So we have to go further upstream. We've set up the Santa Claus democracy. People around the state-owned enterprises don't work. The historical record shows that they've not delivered profits, so you're absolutely right. But I want to go further upstream to do a systemic scrutiny of what it is that we're talking about. Who are the people that are being appointed to the boards of these SOEs? What is the appointment process? The Santa Claus democracy, we are aware, has effectively discolored that process. Are we putting, through meritocratic procedures, the best people who can manage these there? No. These have become places where we park party apparatchiks. There are systems for rewarding those who campaign well. Are you looking for people who are going to manage these for the best return for the society? Or you are giving positions to people because they were loyal to a certain section. And it happens all the time. I submitted through the Institute of Directors, I was part of a group that submitted a proposal to the Institute, to the Constitutional Review Committee. Where it left to me alone, the president should be taking out of all of these things. We need to have a viral, active, independent public services commission that appoints CEOs and boards to the state-owned enterprises on the basis of meritocratic principles. And the president is debarred from intervening. The ministers are debarred. People hear this, they say, but this is utopian, but it's happening in other countries.
Yeah, and you were asking us a while ago to be pragmatic.
Yes.
Do you feel that is pragmatism? Knowing the kind of political system we have. If you were president today, you wouldn't go appointing, say, CEO of Ghana, publishing, if I could just make it up, which is the case, actually, that you wouldn't go appointing someone from the NPP. The NPP man there is gone. It's now an NDC man.
Which takes us to the fundamental conversation about that this system that we are running, is it the right one to take us to prosperity in the medium
But
to long
appointees
term?
have to buy into the vision of the president.
No, they don't necessarily. What is the vision of the president? Is it going to change every 4 years? We started this conversation from a long-term vision. If we then argue that every time the president changes, we must start afresh, press the reset button because there's a new vision and everybody must start, well, then we have a big problem here. And it's not surprising that we are where we are. Which private sector organization worthy of its salt changes its fundamental purpose, its fundamental vision, its top team every time a government changes and has survived? So why do we think that we can build state-owned enterprises to play strategic roles in our economic arrangement and run it this way? So when people say the state-owned enterprises have failed, it is true. But why have they failed? If you run the private sector the way we run our state-owned enterprises, they too will collapse. So we need to go further upstream and sort out the governance issues. And when people say, is it pragmatic? It's not pragmatic if you're talking on the next 3 years. But that's not what I'm focused on. I'm focused on a longer range. And then it becomes pragmatic. Our state system is not working. One of the things that amused me about the work of the Constitutional Review Committee was that one of the members was interviewed and said they went to parts of Ghana where the penetrative impact of the state could not be felt. Many people know this. When you travel around the country, there are many parts in which the penetrative impact of the state does not exist. What you and I know to be police, what you and I know to be separation of powers doesn't exist. They have a traditional chief and that's it. These are the things, the institutional arrangements that must be put together, and we must find the bipartisan consensus to be able to do those things. And today it's not possible.
But that's where I picked up on the write-up you did, the address you gave, at Noguchi, pointing to polarization, which is creeping into our politics. But some say it started way from independence. We've been polarized along the lines of ideology largely. Now it's dissipating into something else. You look at, for instance, what we're still even grappling with till today, just a common name to put on our airport. It's either Kotoka, now it's going to be Accra International Airport. And that's where you would be using for the next few years if you're going in and out of the country. You support the change?
No, I don't support the change, not because I have an ideological position about Kotoka, or I just think it's a needless distraction in process of thought at this time, that we should be debating who the airport is named after. We can name it after Super OD or KK Kabobo for all I care. That's not the issue. If the airport had not been originally named after Kotoka, I would not be pushing to say name it after him. But history is history. Both the good parts, the embarrassing parts, the enhancing parts is a history. There's a reason why that airport came to be known as Kotoka. Kotoka is part of our history. In my view, our responsibility is to contextualize the history with facts so that people make their minds up. You could also call it the Kotoka International Airport as a way of signaling to people that coup d'etats don't pay. And put the facts there. Why is it called Kotoka? Why was he killed there? What was happening? At the end of the day, did we get the change? The majority of people, it seems, in this country have come to a point of view that the 66 coup, that's a way of looking at it. But if we're going to, like we've done with the presidency, one moment is Jubilee House, the next moment is Flagstaff House, and we're wasting this kind of time, you don't get the impression of a country that realizes that development is leaving it by. These are the real issues. So that's the way that I look at things. And I'm not totally sure, because I don't want to be speculative or assume that I know, but sometimes I get the sense that the polarization has become worse. Look, when the Ghana Academy of Sciences, or it's today the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, yes, but I think when it first started, it was the Ghana Academy of Sciences. But anyway, let's park that. When Kwame Nkrumah set it up, the foundation fellows had people like Frederick Togbosai, J.B. Dankwa. These were not people who were CPP elements. They were known elements of the opposition, but they were there. Today, would that happen? I leave it to everyone's guess. I remember reading a story many years ago at Independence, a man who became our president Nana Akufo-Addo, says that one of the major dinners of the independence anniversary was held in his father, Edward Akufo-Addo's hotel. Edward Akufo-Addo, Akufo-Addo, Nana Akufo-Addo wrote this in the days of the Alliance for Change and so on. Yeah. Would that happen today? I'm not totally sure. And when we talk about polarization, I get the impression that the leaders of the political parties are actually not that polarized. But they give the optics of polarization. Then that creates confusion deeper into the society. Together, they are all close. When they are in parliament, they go for lunch together. Yeah. They are all friends. They know each other's spouses and children. And they have the same class interests. They look out for each other. But when they stand on platforms, they say dangerous, incendiary things that can blow up the society.
Well, this is just the beginning of it, because we're now moving into the aspect of solutions, right, and remedial measures, and how we can move Ghana forward in a much more sustainable way. When we return, I'll ask Yaw Nsarkoh about the solution and how to fix this problem. Stay with us on PM Express. We'll be right back. And thanks for staying with us on PM Express. What an intriguing conversation it has been with Yaw Nsarkoh so far, who's taking us on a 360, history, governance, and sustainable development. But now we know we have a challenge. How do we solve it, and how do we move forward? I'm looking for solutions now, because obviously identifying the challenges will not be as hard as finding the solution. With where we are now, how do we start from the basics in terms of, should I use the word resetting? Yeah, because now that's the mantra of the administration. We need a reset, isn't it?
Yeah, we need a reset, but a reset of what?
Okay.
That's the conversation. It has also become one of the epithets that is thrown. So what exactly are we resetting, and what has been reset? Is it a reset of what the immediate predecessor of the government did? Or is it a reset that talks about the structural changes to the political system, to the social relations around the means of production? I don't see the reset in that regard. What have we done around land? Nobody wants to talk about it, because you are talking about the difficult task. But if you study history, there's not one example of a country that did not have slavery, the transatlantic slave trade, the benefits, I put benefits in quotes and quotes, of the colonialism or the transatlantic slave trade, that has made it from prosperity, from poverty to prosperity, without fundamental land reforms. What is our agenda on that? There's absolute chaos. Every time I come onto your program, I talk about it. You look at the land management situation, let's take Accra. It's absolute chaos. Why does nobody center it in our politics? Because then you're going to take on chiefs.
Ownership has not been a challenge, is it?
Ownership is a big challenge.
Oh,
if it wasn't a challenge, why do we have land guards all over? Yeah, when you go to many countries, in Singapore, do they have land guards? Why do we have land guards? Because we realize that the state has lost control of the management system. Why is it that as soon as people buy land, there are all sorts of checks, they are moving people, they say you need to dig quickly, build to lintel level? It's because we understand that there's a certain degree of volatility that is unacceptable. So we need to talk about this. The Land Act was done, but the Land Act was an elite thing where it is wrote on a piece of paper that land guards have been outlawed. Without dealing of any of the structural causal factors, you just write and sign that land guards have been outlawed. Not one land guard left. They're beat. They're still there. That's one thing. You need to deal with the land system and do it in a way that is culturally acceptable and that is consistent and compatible with a harmonious society, given our history. Now, if you're going to deal with land, we must talk about the residual feudal system that is our chieftaincy. I'm not saying abolish it, but if 70% of the national security budget is being used on that one institution, they control the land in ways that are not clear. Sometimes I hear utterances of chiefs and I'm not sure who is in charge. The people we have elected to run the republic or all these traditional elements. So going forward, how are we going to make the chieftaincy institution clearly subordinate to the modern state, but respected? That is a conversation that we have to have. Number three, you have what I call the root of all evils. You cannot have a political system that is so openly over-monetized with funds flowing in from where we do not know. And we all know, we've just seen primaries in one constituency where you have leaders of political parties saying, everybody did it, so we don't know what to do, so it goes on. These are people who are going to sit in parliament and make laws for you and I. And this is how they start, throwing money around from where we do not know. So you have to deal with those things.
And you're not fixated on the political class. And, well, I'm just saying that in respect of this monetization issue. It goes both ways. If I'm giving you cash for your votes and you don't accept them, that situation would not arise.
I agree that the citizens have a responsibility as well.
Yeah.
But I have a basic way of looking at things, especially when politicians are in power. They like to say, oh, you guys over-focus on us too much. We're not the only people. The problem is the Ghanaian. I say, okay, fine. I accept as a citizen that I have a certain degree of culpability if the system has fallen apart. But when I was driving here, if a minister of state was also driving here for an interview, and he came with his motorcade and his siren, I have to park. So he can go past. I accept that. I have no problem. He is offered to lead in a certain way in the country and taking up responsibility. If I have to park to let him go, that's fine. I'm willing to do it. But if he is willing to do it, then he must accept the responsibility that comes with it.
So you feel it's much more about leadership?
Yes, there's clearly a leadership issue. We should not run away from that. They make the decisions, the big decisions that affect us. Leadership is a very important aspect of society. There is tons of research that talks about that the biggest influence on behavior in organizations and in society is the observed behavior of leadership. So that's very important. But it is not leadership as lone rangers. It is leadership in terms of their systemic and systematic impact. So what system legacy are they leaving? Not just that they role model certain behaviors, but it needs to translate. I often point out to people, we talk about chaos in our societies. Why is it that when you take the same people, take the taxi drivers of Accra, put them all on a ship and ship them to Singapore, give them cars, suddenly they all obey the law. Why? Because there are cameras, there's a consequence if you break the law, they know what the law is, it is communicated in ways that everybody understands. So they are not genetically disorderly. If you create a permissive environment in which there is impunity, then you have what happened. I spoke about it yesterday. A pastor, I'm going to Kumasi, I know how long it is. Somebody says that he's having an all-night service, and then he blocks the road for 6 hours. And there's no impunity. It's just total impunity. What was the consequence? You are the media people, you tell me. It's just gone. So next time another person does it. We do the same. Somebody's building a house. It gets broken down. You're looking for somebody even to report it to. You do, as I have done before, to a very senior person in government at the time. Says to me, this is a real problem. It's happening everywhere. It even happened to my sister. That's the end of the matter. You take it to court, it stays there for 7 years. So these are the fundamental issues, and we need bipartisan consensus. So my last point in terms of solutions is that we cannot continue to run the Santa Claus democracy with this over-monetization, with the political vehicles that are called political parties that are no longer truly accountable to the people of Ghana. These are elite enterprises now.
Unfortunately for us, there's no third force. At least it's not emerging so far.
I'm not even totally sure that getting a third force is the solution. A third force to do what? Also go around and get money from all sorts of people in opaque ways and not be accountable? Then they're just replicating this. So what you need is to bring transparency to the political system. Singapore doesn't have 3 political parties, but look where they are. China doesn't have And cite the examples.
Yes. So how about a better alternative? The US has multi-party, or at least a two-system democracy. Same with the UK. They're making it. They're progressing. So why look at the Asian model?
Well, first of all, is that you have to remember that I'm not even totally sure that the US is making it, but let's leave it.
Political question.
Let's leave it for another day. But first is that you also have to look at the historical trajectory. There are major elements of the way that the US accumulation of capital happened that are totally not open to us. The transatlantic slave trade was not just simply an act of wicked people. It was a source of cheap labor. Today, where are you going to, who do you propose to enslave? So that option does not exist. If you are talking about people who were able to access natural capital through the agency, the dark agency of colonialism, today, who is Ghana going to colonize? It doesn't exist. So we must look at our circumstances. Can we cooperate better as a sub-region, for example? It may not have been a conversation for other people. We must look at that. Some of the people who have made it from our kind of peripheral poverty to prosperity in our lifetime are in Asia. So we must learn from them, not necessarily just take what they have done and think that they will work here, because they looked at their historical circumstances. But where is this debate happening? In Parliament? No. They are all standing there trying to guilt trip each other and think about how I can win power the next time so that I'm the one who is appointing people to all the... So serious development talk on a bipartisan basis, I ask you, where is it happening?
Reparatory justice, and I'll just tie that to the point you're making. Some other economies developed largely because of what they benefited from. As the president is now championing reparatory justice, he believes is one of Africa's surest ways of regaining momentum and perhaps leapfrogging into development. But they wanted to start with healing, if not, actual reparation in terms of cash or money or whatever it is. Where do you stand in that whole divide?
Look, the moral justification for that injury was done through the process is unassailable. But then you must also place what we're trying to do in the real world. To whom must the return from reparations go? Why shouldn't it be given to the people in the diaspora, who in a sense were the most dislocated? Are the economies that we are demanding this from even in a position to pay those sorts of monies that we are talking about? So what exactly the reparatory campaign, the reparations campaign wants needs to be articulated much, much better. There are different ways in which you can structure things so that you benefit from knowledge systems and so on. But to merely, as one person said to me, sit down and think that there's a box of money that is going to be handed over you, so you build, handed over to you so that you build railways and so on, is in my view, in 2026, exceedingly utopian, and it's not going to happen.
But it's enjoying the support of many African countries.
Yeah, because...
Or they feel there's some cool cash there.
Well, they should show us the route to that cool cash. If we are not careful, this becomes an escapist route. There are many elements of the discussion on reparations that can lead to cultural identity, more solidarity amongst people of Africa and people of African descent, tracing exactly what happened, what binds us. We have now allowed, because the media has not properly harnessed the resources of true historians to tell the story, we've allowed the discussion around this thing is about guilt tripping. People in the diaspora saying, you sold us. This is a minority of people who were involved in indigenous slavery and who did this. So if you're talking about reparations in that way, telling the story properly, bringing the global African society together. But if it becomes this neoliberal discussion about how have we been putting the price tag? You went through the humiliation of disruption. Your people were captured in tens of thousands. Who is going to sit down and say that if you give me $50 million for that, that then solves the issue. So there are very complex dimensions, and the reparations discussion itself must open up, become much more democratic, be willing to be challenged and contested, and then the people of Africa must themselves articulate, this is what we think is the way forward.
Globally speaking, there's just so much uncertainty, and it's leading to some kind of a blessing and at the same time a curse or a conundrum for Ghana. And there's so much dependence on gold now, which is a resource we have in abundance. But you look at what's happening around the world, and it's just a gold rush, people going for gold, and the countries producing it, such as Ghana, not having absolute control over the entire supply chain. We're just producing and selling it off.
Well, the reason why is because we haven't really altered the post-independence economic structure much. We're still a primary producer, so we are focused on cocoa and gold. How different is that from when Gordon Gettysburg was in Ghana or the Gold Coast at the time in the 1920s? It's the same. So I've spoken about this here before. Many people have written about it. Fundamentally, what happened at independence, I used to use the expression post-colonial, but maybe we should be talking about post-independence, is that the new elite took charge and fundamentally did not reform the economic structure. The social relations around the means of production did not really change. Amilcar Cabral warned about this. He said, you're declaring independence and you're very happy, but what you have is a dark-skinned president, an anthem, and a flag. You've not taken sovereign control of your productive forces. And when you have sovereign control of your productive forces, you must plow back the returns in order to alter your economic structure so that you are higher up. But what we do is every now and then there's a wave, and we say there's $100 billion chocolate market. We produce the cocoa, so we want the biggest chunk of that. But with what? With what are you going to do that? That's what you have to articulate. And that's why you have all these starts and stops. We talk about it and we realize that you are up against competitors who have been building the infrastructure of their brands, their distribution channels, their finance system. They have been at this for 600 years. So if you're going to upend it, first of all, you don't start shouting when you have no structure on the ground. You need to operate with some stealth and covertly. That's first. And secondly, you have to understand the nature of the competitor you're going up against. The markets are not empty. They're not waiting for us. So if you say you're going to take it, your electricity is much more expensive, your basic infrastructure is not in place, you have to think through very carefully what you're doing over here.
But gold bought is a good start, isn't it?
Gold's good start to what?
Good start.
You leave these hanging and you want me to catch it. So it's a good start to what?
Good start to effective management, optimum use of our gold resources, isn't it?
Over what period of time? Are we doing this for the long term? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. So it's a good start. Unfortunately, it's a partisan appraisal, which I don't want to be dragged in.
Oh, really? You see that to be a partisan appraisal?
Yeah, it's a partisan appraisal. They're always fighting about it.
Often you see the attribution to the performance of the CD, going once more into, further in the cap for gold bought, they say. And same is said of the impact on the reserves of the central bank as well. So looks like we're using artisanal gold, which hitherto would have, flown out in terms of capital out of this country. We're gaining something for it, is it?
How much of the artisanal gold is from Galamsey?
Well, at least 40% of the market, we understand.
And so 40% is a huge part that is coming at significant ecological destruction. Why is the media not talking about it? They say to me the CD has stabilized. What is the optimal currency exchange rate? Have we even had an open discussion about that? And if the cost of that is that we destroy our ecological system, is that okay? These are conversations that we have to have openly. And we have to have them not talking about what the gold board has done in 10 months or 12 months. We have to have them saying in 50 years, what is the system that will be in place? Unfortunately, the conversation has become, the NPP guys say, we started it. and you have come and taken the idea. The NDC guy says, that's not true. But I said, but what are the two of you even squabbling about? What has fundamentally changed? Do you and I even know what the optimal exchange rate is? Optimal in the sense that, yes, you may have had an appreciation of currency, but then it dries up in terms of the number of CDs that you have in order to pay the cocoa farmers. So what is the optimal rate? Have we had, and in a democratic system, are these not the conversations we should be having? Rather than that, we see them on TV and they're all joking about and talking about and trying to trip each other on political sloganeering. Is that what should be happening? So that's why I say fundamentally, the governance system, we have to relook it and be more serious about development and trying to reach prosperity, realizing every day that we wake up that the majority of our compatriots do not have it easy in this country.
Many would have expected that once the gold rush is on, I will be taking off cocoa. But the reverse is the case. There's so much attention coming back onto cocoa now because of the world market price and how that is impacting the average cocoa farmer. And you say it's because we've not diversified. The diversification is not happening. The cocoa farmers are complaining now at least. And there's that temptation for a government to be pushed on a political grounds to just want to make voluntary losses just to please farmers. That's where the government finds itself now.
I don't consider pleasing farmers just, by the way. Look, they are the people who have contributed significantly through backbreaking exertion to the accumulation of our Commonwealth. So I can see strategic circumstances under which taking a bit of a loss in the short term in order to be able to keep them. That's what stabilization funds and sovereign funds. But people who put these things in place are not thinking about political cycles, who's going to win in 2028. They're thinking about long-term harmony, peace, development, prosperity in your society. So that's the first way. But you see, the sad part about the way you formulated your question is that we are caught in the discussion of our primary products. If you look at the trade reports, the export reports of Ghana, we're standing on three legs. Cocoa, gold, oil. Most of which we add absolutely no value. The value addition discussion has gone on forever. We are by no means the first generation to be talking about it. I suspect that we will not be the last. Why is it not moving? We've talked about the 24-hour economy. Where is it? You are talking about the fundamental liberation of the productive forces of a country. Perhaps you need to do it in association because we're small countries and small economies, so you have to do it in some sort of modern expression of Pan-Africanism. It's not going to be the way that Nkrumah and the others looked at it, definitely, because we're living in a different world. But if you don't start to have that structural conversation, then there's no plan. That's why when I said to you, when you say we had a plan, which we are you talking about? And president come, president go in this Fourth Republic, why are we not able to talk about the plan? From Mao to Xi Jinping, they are able to talk about a plan. There was a 100-year plan. 2021, they put another one in place. They think about their 5-year plans as something that is relatively short term. When we say short term, we're talking 3 months. And then we start talking about gold board intervention. What are we going to do about the destruction that Galamsey has brought? What are we going to do about the systemic shifts that are moving from cocoa because the price has gone down into things that are destroying the environment? At what point are we going to be able to say that we have eliminated opinification? At what point are we going to be able to say that we have a health system? There's a big discussion in Ghana now going on because doctors turn people away. Yeah, but the health system is broken. So do you victimize one or two actors in there, or you sit back and you say, wow, this thing is broken? And I'm not saying that any one person should just stand up and say, I have all the solutions. I am saying that we must democratize the discourse, come back to serious things. You see why I started off by talking about the over-legalization of financialization. How much time do you spend, or do you see, I'm not criticizing just Joy, how much time do you see in the media being devoted to the things that we are talking about over here. And those are the things that we must be talking about, not the next budget, not the next IMF review. Where is this country going to be in 2050? Where am I supposed to look to get a consensus view about what the Ghanaian people want? It doesn't exist.
Probably the Constitutional Review Committee report is giving us a pathway, but we're waiting what the executive intends to do with the plan going forward. But what's the top 3 pick for you out of that, the aspirations that you're seeing and the kind of feedback Ghanaians are giving through that report?
Well, we're all waiting to see what the executive will say, because at the end of the day, the committee, within the constraints and context that they have to operate, have done the best that they can. It is what goes into law. I think that there have to be some fundamental changes to the governance structure. And that's what I'll be looking out to see. There are some areas in which, in my view, they didn't go far enough, but I can understand the political constraints within which they were working, and especially that you have existing parliamentarians and so on. We have spent a little bit of time talking about the governance structure for the state itself, which we need to significantly address. I have become more and more concerned. I can't give objective evidence, but I think that through the Fourth Republic, we have also seen a significant amount of politicization of the armed forces. This is a dangerous development in a country with our development history. But if every president comes and then changes the entire guard, and people say to me, but other countries do it, but we're not other countries, we are fragile institutions. So I am Chief of Defense Staff today. You are the president. You've lost an election. It is my responsibility to enforce the electoral will of the people of Ghana. But I know that if I chase you out, the next president that comes is going to replace me. Do you see the tension we have created? Would it not be better to create an armed forces commission by some constitutional criteria of very independent actors who are the ones who are doing this, and therefore take these powers away? There was a point in time when I said to myself that when people would say, our president has too much powers, I'm not totally sure that's the issue. But given the experience of about 30 years of this, I would like to see certain, for example, feel that the Chief Justice appointment, even the appointment of Supreme Court judge, all of those things should be taken away from the president, because we have such an infantilized approach to the way that we practice politics that if you don't do those sorts of things, you're going to run into difficulties. And that's where I said maybe it didn't go far enough, but even that which they have recommended, let us see what will go through the net.
Why is the presidential age not striking you in that document? 30 years for a president, for an individual to become a president.
Why not? You have 74% of Ghanaians say they are Christians. If God came to the earth and did his work in the 30s, why can a president not be 30?
Is that realistic
I don't understand the debate.
In our economy?
Why not? Why do we think that you have to be 80 or 90 to be able to master? What was the age of Macron? He was 37. If he can run France, why can a 30-year-old not run? Look, in my view, the real question here is that we create a system in which the people of Ghana can choose who they want. And if they choose a 30-year-old, so be it. It is not for 80-year-olds to say a 30-year-old is not ready. Where is the evidence that people of my generation have done any better? So it's up to the people of Ghana to decide. And I have absolutely no issue with it. I know that it created a huge furore. People saying, oh, 30-year-olds, what do they know? But that's a very condescending point of view. The world has changed in terms of technological facilities and capabilities, etc. And the Constitutional Review Committee was not saying by any means that we impose a 30-year-old. It's up to you. So why not?
But maybe it goes to the heart of how the youth increasingly aspiring to be included in the governance process. Sadly, it's not a reality on the ground.
That's why we must overhaul the whole political party system. Where are the institutional academies that are taking people, training them from there? They mentioned some names, but you tell me, where are the products of those people who they have very clear articulated ideas for the long term. So you have a long pipeline of people who are coming through. So the youth have every right to want to be included. I support them totally in that endeavor. But the inclusion should be done in systematic, and institutional ways so that you build a pipeline. I often point out to people, I'm using the example of China again. At the time Deng Xiaoping was in charge, Xi Jinping was already in charge of the Ningdi prefecture. At the age of 28 or 29, Deng Xiaoping, long before, when he came into power, he was 74, long before he was already in the top structures of the Communist Party of China. And you take this example also in Western countries. It's the same. We have no real institutional arrangement. So the political parties need to be overhauled in that regard. And I talk with a degree of intensity because I don't think we have forever to get our act together. We sometimes behave as if whenever we are ready, then the world is ready for us. But the world is moving on. Other people are doing things.
The point about youth unemployment, when it comes up, it's almost becoming an everyday topic now. People are getting used to it. But it is indeed a crisis because the numbers will keep compounding. The projection is that if you look across Africa, the demographics is quite scary, that we will have quite a significant labor force with very little job opportunities. But where are the jobs? How do we create them?
The problem is not youth unemployment. Youth unemployment is a symptom of the problem. The problem is that you're not getting inclusive growth because you're not properly managing your productive forces. Youth unemployment, rural-urban drift, all these are consequences. If you keep people with proper occupations where they feel that they are returns and you have a growing pie, it absorbs the new youth. And what you actually even find, again, demographically proven in many places, is if your economy is expanding, is growing in inclusive ways, as more and more women come into the workplace, the rapid population growth actually also starts to decrease. So the whole thing comes into place. So we are talking about youth unemployment because the productive sectors of this economy have not grown as they should. That's the reason. That really is the reason. The reason why you have so much urban chaos and people moving from the rural areas is also because nothing is happening in the rural areas. So for me, these are the big conversations that we should be having. Not we're trying to score political points in parliament and throwing stones at each other, and then in the next 2 weeks I have a friend who says that it is discussed on Newsfile, on Joy, then we go to the next subject. It's forgotten.
And I want to go back to what I pointed out, that, okay, it's part of the reasons why we're, of course, fortunate to have you here for a conversation is because you've been speaking to a group of academics at the Noguchi Memorial Institute. And once again, I'll go back to that instructive conversation you had with them, with the kind of keynote address you gave. One part that also struck me was the issue of you suggesting that no country in the world has developed without research and the academia.
Yeah, you have to say, what is scientific exertion about? When you talk about liberating your productive forces, the study of science is really taking control, beginning to understand the phenomena, the way that they are governed on an interdisciplinary basis. And this is why knowledge is the primary productive force, absolutely. What are you going to do? There's sand. Everybody saw sand on the ground. Yeah. Somebody took it and built castles and made glass out of it. And some people are still playing with the sand as it was. So how you devote attention, investment into the development of knowledge. The science is usually used in the broader sense, but when you use it, people think you're talking about only one side of knowledge. That's what people like Noguchi, etc. are doing, but how much of a role do we even give to them in our society? How much do people even know the strategic contribution that they make? We now have a discussion in this country where a public university system is being defunded. There's a proliferation. Now, if you lose control of your ability to strategically develop the productive force that is knowledge, you are not part of history. You're not part of the future either. So it's a crisis. A country that was very well known for its scholastic resources is now entering a crisis phase, partly because of the economic meltdown. And you can trace it to the neoliberal reforms and so on in the university system. We don't have the time to get into it.
You've had the conversation that the Ghanaian scientist has not contributed anything tangible to the Ghanaian society. It's as though they're always feeding other economies and other systems to develop, but when they come home, we're not feeling their impact.
I would say provocatively that is an illiterate position. Science does not grow and flourish without a functioning ecosystem.
Right.
So if you go to the US, for example, you go Stanford University, Palo Alto University, San Francisco University, and it's in the broad area where Silicon Valley is. And then you have financiers. So you've built an ecosystem that funds it. Where is our ecosystem?
We don't have.
If you as a scientist today, I mean, what are you going to be able to do? And this is why when people say it's just the private sector, it's a joke. The Silicon Valley was not built by the private sector alone. It was a strategic endeavor by the federal government of the United States, rightly so. By embarking on things like the moonshot, they came up with polymers, new material, new energy systems, and so on. That's how you develop a society. But where is this happening in our country? How many times are we focusing in your prime time programs on high quality scientific discussion? No, it's the latest court case.
Is it not a cash problem?
What is the cash problem?
That ecosystem has got to be supported by
so
cash.
it's for us to build our economy to such an extent that we can fund such things. And then you have to ask, is that where we are headed?
Is it because of the lack of appreciation for science?
I think that is definitely a factor. I think that is definitely a factor, that we do not understand the role of science and technology and even knowledge itself. Yes, I grew up in a world where some of the most celebrated people in this country were the scholars. Today we're not there. There's politicians shouting, somersaulting all over the place. Do they really lose sleep over who is going to be the next Alexander Dunkwapong in this country, or Ajebe Queen in this country, or Ivan Adai-Mensah? Some of the people at the academy have said that they used to sit with Kwame Nkrumah on a fortnightly or sometimes weekly basis. Today, is that happening? Or it's all about, no, how are we going to win this primaries over here? How are we going to win this over there? You cannot run a country like that. So, because I'm with the media, I like to always provoke who I am before. I would make the appeal that all of us have a responsibility also, and the scientists themselves must take advantage to make their case, because they are the experts, they are the people who have the knowledge. But we cannot every day be talking about that there was a court case here, there was a court case there, GDP has changed by 10 basis points, etc., and completely neglect the discourse. Galamsey, where are the scientists, the experts that are talking about it in the media? There's all sorts of pundits and so on who have no idea what is actually happening in terms of chemical reaction, leaching, etc. So let's also change that. Then the society becomes more literate.
We're looking forward to the next generation, and to ensure sustainable development, I will just want to take your thoughts on this rather controversial one before we go. The fact that, or the proposition that a four-year cycle, a four-year electoral cycle is partly the bane of why we're not advancing. Some are saying we need long-term leaders. Some are saying we need a third-term leader. Some are saying that, and I'm sure you've heard it, that we don't have to be doing elections every 4 years. So going into the future, what do you project will be ideal for us?
Look, I think we're always looking for a magic bullet. We make our discourse too simplistic. There are people with a 4 or 5 year cycle who have also developed. The Scandinavian countries have done well. And when you just oversimplify the issue, let's say it's the 4 year cycle that is the problem. It is our 4 year cycle and how we do it It's so over-monetized. Singapore also has term limits, and they also have elections. The elections, even though they're a much more prosperous country than ours, it's not as over-monetized. In Singapore, if you go around the way that people go around and source for money without declaring, and so you're in big, big trouble. So it's not a question of, is it 4 years? Is it? We've had no shortage. Mobutu Sese Seko was in power in DRC for how long? What did he leave behind? In this country, we have had people, Jerry Rawlings was in power for 19 years. Did that work for us? So it is more the hygiene of the systemic arrangements that we have put in place that should be driven by the primary accountability towards improving the well-being of people. If we can put that in place, then we're fine. And whether it's 4 years, 5 years, then follows.
Yeah.
It's for the people to decide.
But you are a Ghanaian, obviously, so
Yes.
you would want to leave a caution with the people of Ghana. By the time you're returning, or we're returning to this conversation, what would you want to see, or where would you want to see the average Ghanaian?
Well, I'm very clear in my mind that I would like to see poverty removed. I would like to see them with access to basic sanitation, living in better housing arrangements. And if that happens, the health and well-being of people, better nutrition. We will also think better as a result if you get all those factors together.
Right.
But in the immediate, I'd like to see a significant decrease in the noise and shouting that has saturated the media. I didn't have the chance to go on my topic that I'm speaking about. We've created so much despair and hopelessness that so many charlatan prophets and mystics and Rasputins have come into this country now, posing as advisors to presidents and so on, predicting election outcomes, misleading people on what health outcomes are. We must intervene and stop that before things get much worse.
Yeah. And I must promise you that Yaw Nsarkoh will be back because he's always with us. And this has been another insightful one, giving us a sense of where we are, the need to introspect and plunge into the future with sustainable development in mind. That's it for PM Express. I am Blessed Sogah. Until then, log on to myjoyonline.com. We'll be back your way again. Bye for now.